Hello, I'm Ajahn Sona, and this is the live stream from Birken Forest Monastery. Welcome. So let us begin with the first question, Pia.
Ajahn, our first question states, when encountering aging and sickness, how does one skillfully ask others for help?
Well, I don't think a lot of skill is required. What's required is that a person not feel guilty or burdensome for asking for help, because this is actually a gift for others. When you're sick, when you need help, others get a chance to practice generosity, kindness, compassion, and skill in sharing. And so others need opportunities for practice. So as I'm sure you found in your life, that we don't always consider it a burden. We quite often welcome the opportunity to help others. It's quite a restorative and enlivening act in life. And so think of it that way, that you're going to allow others to make some merit, some positive energy, and that people's lives are enhanced by helping others. This is the function of why monks go on alms round, and why monks have to remain dependent for their physical requirements on lay people. Monks, bhikkhus, the sangha, the large monastic sangha, could go off and become farmers and hermits and never see anybody again. But the Buddha disallowed that. He said, no, you must remain completely dependent on the lay people every single day of your life for food. And the food that you get cannot be stored, kept, or bought, or even cooked by yourself. It must be offered by lay people, and it has to be offered between dawn and noon, and eaten before noon. So you can't keep it, and you need to then virtually have contact with a layperson every single day if you want to eat. You do have the option of not eating. That won't last long. And you are also dependent on the lay community for medicine and clothes, like robes and so forth, and also shelter. And the Buddha makes it that way, as he calls it, that the Bhikkhu Sangha is a matchless field of merit for the world. Because when everybody is taking care of themselves and not taking care of everybody else, things go downhill. It's only when you have an opportunity to, take care of people, including absolute strangers, that something beautiful arises in the world. A profound, enlarged experience of loving kindness arises in the world, because it's one thing to take care of your immediate relatives, but it's another thing to take care of a stranger. And that is a different level of the game of compassion and loving kindness. It is now the universal level. And you see, of course, that humans get great joy and warmth out of even taking care of animals. So animals don't have hospitals and things like that. And if other animals or humans don't take care of them, they just die. So there are humans who get great joy and great rewards out of taking care of strangers, of the poor, of animals, of the old, and anybody who's sick, including children who don't know what to do. They get sick, but they don't know what to do. So people see that they're sick and they take care of them, etc. So everybody is in the same boat. The Buddha himself was sick on various occasions, and monks attended to him. And in fact, on one occasion, a monk was very, very ill, and the Buddha arrived at that monastery, and the monk was not tended to. He was lying in his own soilings, And the Buddha and his attendant Ananda became his nurse, and they took care of him, bathed him, and gave him medicine. And then he said to the monks, after this, your obligation is to take care of sick monks. Whoever takes care of a sick monk takes care of the Buddha. So we can also say this to people in general, that when you take care of a person, you're also taking care of whatever is highest in your spectrum of respect. You're also taking care of the Buddha. So you as a sick person, you are a gift to others as well, not just a burden to others, but also a gift to others to develop these higher emotions. So don't hesitate to ask and to give people the opportunity. If people don't understand that they're being given an opportunity for the higher states of the emotions, the higher mind, that's fine. That's not your job to teach them that, but some will understand that. Okay, next question.
Our next question is from the live feed. It's from Alex in Spain. Dear Ajahn, what commentaries, books, and monk biographies do you recommend to progress in and get inspired for the practice of metta?
Well, metta. I recommend that you watch my YouTube videos and that you read my book, which is called Bloom, and Teachings of Serenity and Love. And especially the last half of the book is almost all on metta, loving kindness. And so if that's the print version of it, that book has also been narrated by Bodhipala, one of our stewards in the monastery, very nicely. So it's freely available on the YouTube channel and on podcasts. And I have gone to a lot of trouble to explain the core suttas by the Buddha on loving kindness. So I gave a 10-day retreat recently on metta, in which I went through, I think 8 of the talks were on the Metta Sutta, which is the core foundational sutta, and then another couple of talks on another sutta called the 11 Benefits of Loving Kindness. And so you should listen to those many times, because they're full examinations and explorations of metta. If you really listen to those and other talks, so I probably have 20 or more, 25 talks on metta on the YouTube channel. It's freely available. And I gave those talks because I obviously didn't think it was fully covered yet. So it's covered in the way I have understood it after decades of listening to talks, being in monasteries, reading books and the suttas, and practicing myself. So this is the distillation of long practice and long reflection and the cultivation of this divine emotion on my own part, and also in discussions with others. So I won't go through some encyclopedia of books on metta, but I will recommend that you watch those, and you will have a substantial knowledge of the basic teachings of metta. In fact, not just the basics, but a lot of the details and intricacies of metta practice.
Our next question is from Mert in Melbourne, Australia. What is rebirthed? I am having a hard time consolidating the teachings on rebirth and those of anatta or emptiness. What is born again 7 times for a sotapanna? What becomes a hungry ghost? Is that my essential nature? Does it continue?
Well, this is a frequently asked question, and it tells us something. When people are puzzled by this idea, it tells you what the world, generally in the world, how we think about a person. We think about them as a sustained kind of essential personality which travels through time. And this is the condition of the views at the time of the Buddha, and this is called the theory of soul. So a soul is a kind of indestructible entity which moves through time and is not touched by impermanences. So the Buddha, this is his revelation, a very important revelation, is that no such thing exists. And such a thing as a soul which is not affected by change and in a sense does not change itself is impossible to imagine. And because it couldn't be conscious, it couldn't feel, it couldn't think. All of these things are processes. So the Buddha had a revelation that there is no such thing as an entity, a solid entity that travels through time or jumps out of one body and into another. So what do we end up with? Is it just, do we perish at death? So this is now another common philosophy that was around and is around today. It's probably in at least the scientific circles, the most common explanation is that the human is a process of body and mind, and which ceases at death. So if you don't have this immortal soul, then you must just cease. So these are the two wrong ideas that the Buddha corrected. He said, neither of those are the case. It is the case, though, that all that you are, which is called the 5 khandhas, or 5 aggregates, all of them are flowing processes. And in the midst of them, none of them are a sort of an atomic monad that is indestructible and doesn't change. But that does not mean that you cease at death. And so it's very easy to understand. Just imagine going from being a fetus, something the size of a little fingernail, and then that grows into a baby. Now, is the fingernail fetus inside the baby? No, the fingernail is not inside the baby. The information is just changing. The information in our body, the DNA and the structures of our body are continuously flowing and changing. A child does not become a teenager. There is a child, and then there's a teenager. There's not a child inside a teenager. You understand. So an oak seed does not become an oak tree. There is a process. There is a continuous flow of materiality in and through the seed, and all that the seed is also changing and flowing. So a human is like that. You are not something like a multi-layered being with a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old and a 6-year-old and a 7-year-old inside you. All of those things are just flowing, transient information processes. And there's no reason why at the end of this life the body drops away, but some of the information that is developed in this life is also goes on and finds a new material matrix to continue. So the mind just keeps flowing. The feelings and perceptions and consciousness keep flowing. They just flow out of one body into another. So you take a pitcher of water and you pour it into a glass, or you take a glass of water and pour it into another glass. So that's what's happening, is there's no self or identity in there. Endless change takes place. You're not the same person you were yesterday. So the process goes on. There is no essence. So this is something we have to get our minds around. It's a process. There is no essence. There is no essential identity, no essential self. Mercifully. So you can change, you can flow anywhere, you can become anything in this universe. Everything is transformable and subject to change. These changes are lawful. There's understanding processes which are not just random or chaotic. And if we can get a hold of the information of how change occurs, we can transform into a much more wholesome and enlightened person. And that information, as you gain that enlightenment information, then regression doesn't take place. It doesn't mean that processes stop. It just means that regression doesn't take place. So you asked, what becomes a sotapanna? Well, a process becomes when we talk about a sotapanna, we're talking about mind, really. And this is a universal process of mind. There are no personal minds. There's only universal minds. And these, when the dawn and the light arises in those minds, it does not regress. It progresses, inevitably progresses. So that's good. Well, of course, all monks have to answer this question many, many times. What is it that's reborn? So rebirth might be the wrong word for this, but it's a continuous streaming flow of processes. That's all.
Our next question is from the live feed from Brad. Hello, Ajahn. I hear you frequently express how becoming aware of phenomena from a point of non-reactivity is not enough, especially in regards to the hindrances. However, I have found, especially when concentration is good, that the mere ability to be aware and not react is enough for emotions like anxiety to dissipate. It seems oftentimes the mere recognition is enough. Would you agree?
No, I would not. I think you have a basic confusion about what I say. And I think half the world has 90% of the world has a basic confusion. When you are not you are not a detached observer observing a hindrance. So you're not detached and angry at the same time. You're not a mere observer of your own anger. You are angry. Part of you knows you're angry, but that's not good enough. That is not detached observation. So this is where the confusion happens. It's confused language. So you can be detached from a pain in your knee, or you stub your toe and your toe is throbbing. Yes, you can be detached. And by the way, what does detached mean? It just means that you're not reacting to that painful feeling. But that's a bodily feeling. That's not an emotional feeling. An emotional feeling is a very different thing. That means when you have an emotional feeling that's painful or problematic, like anger or greed, agitation, sadness, depression, sloth, heaviness, or difficult doubts, these are called the five hindrances. They are intrinsically a reaction. You're not detached. You are reacting. And they have an accompanying feeling tone to them. They are nothing like being detached or an observer of a physical feeling. You are not observing and detached. A psychiatrist or, say, a monk who's in the same room with you and you're angry, they can be observing you with detachment. They might observe you with loving kindness. But you're not, you are attached. So the definition of attached is the five hindrances. You are attached. That is what an attachment is. Anger is an attachment. Greed is an attachment. So you're not both detached and attached at the same time. You're attached. So this is the confusion that people have. And the solution to that attachment is not mere observation, because you are not merely observing. You are actually creating volitionally that anger. And if it wasn't volitional, if it wasn't something that you did and do to create and sustain it, then the case for becoming enlightened would be hopeless. But it's because you can anticipate the possibility of anger, prevent anger from arising, see anger when it arises. Now, by the way, when you see anger when it arises, you are still attached to it. You're not a detached observer. You're an angry person, aware that you're angry. And your duty at that time is to interrupt, replace, remove that emotion, not to simply watch it. But the first obligation is to know that you're angry. So that's the baby step. That's the first beginner baby step. I'm angry. That's not enough. The anger is there. Now, if the moment you are aware that you're angry, it goes away, fine. That's enough. But for most people, it isn't. So then they have to say, now what? I know I'm angry, but I'm still angry. So then there are other strategies which must be employed to overcome and remove that anger. And that has to be done with great concern and attention. But the attention itself is not the thing that removes the anger. There's lots of people who can tell you perfectly lucidly that they're angry. They're furious. This is what happens in the midst of an argument. I am furious with you. Well, that person knows they're furious. Does the fury go away when they notice? No, it doesn't. There's nothing that is inherent in observation that removes negative emotions. It's not inherent in that. And that is not what is meant by right mindfulness. That is what there's a whole industry called mindfulness. And they're mistaken in the idea that mindfulness is mere attention and somehow that cures everything. It doesn't. The Buddha never said anything of the sort. He preceded right mindfulness with something called right effort. And if you don't know what the little list under right effort is, then you're missing most of the path. You need to read the Eightfold Path and to see the little drop-down menu under right effort. And this tells you be doing. It's to prevent and remove unwholesome mental states. What are unwholesome mental states? 5 hindrances. Greed, anger, agitation, sloth, and doubt. That's your duty. Now, use your mindfulness in inspecting your body, your feelings, your mind, and Dhamma teachings. This is the 4 foundations of mindfulness. That's what their purpose is to remove your covetousness and grief for the world. Remove them. And they arise through inspection of the 5 khandhas. That is all that a human is. And if it is successful, then right concentration will arise. Right? You cannot be in right concentration and have any of the 5 hindrances. The 5 hindrances have subsided before right samadhi, right concentration, arises. They are not compatible. They are mutually exclusive. You are not in concentration and even mildly irritated at the same time. It's not possible. It's mutually exclusive. So this is something I've been on about for the last 15 or 20 years or so. And if you want more careful, you must listen carefully to the talks on right effort a dozen or more talks on right mindfulness, and then another dozen on right samadhi, samadhi, to get this clear, because this is one of the most confused areas of the teachings of the Buddha, of the Eightfold Path, Buddhism, and it's also pervades modern psychological teachings, etc., this movement about mindfulness. But if they do not have the concept of right mindfulness, they will have extracted a carburetor out of a car's engine and think that this carburetor is the essence of an engine. But a carburetor outside of an engine doesn't work at all. It's only a paperweight. It's all of the factors of the Eightfold Path are what make the engine run. And if you take one out without reference to the others, the thing doesn't run. The carburetor by itself is just a paperweight. Attention by itself is just a paperweight. It's not functioning. So this is very, very, very important. So one needs to reflect on this a lot, and it may cut sharply against many, many teachings that many, many people have heard. They have heard that there are kind of things floating across your mind like clouds. Just watch them. Just don't interfere. Just watch the rising and passing of the thought process and so forth. No, no, no. Okay, next question.
Our next question is from Stefan in Tilburg, the Netherlands. Dear Ajahn, I have this tendency to be overwhelmed in crowded places. I've noticed that since COVID, this tendency became stronger, and my fight or flight mode is triggered more rapidly. To reduce this, should I expose myself more to crowds more often? Or should I meditate more? As you've mentioned, this resolves restlessness, or perhaps both.
Well, I think that you might start, instead of going out into a crowd, the first thing you do is you become very calm and relaxed in the safety of your own home, so you're feeling very at ease and well. And then you imagine stepping out into the street, and you imagine there's only one person in the street, and it's a friend of yours. So you feel relaxed. There's my friend. So you walk up to your friend and say hello, and then you walk on. And then there's a few more people who you recognize, but you don't know well, and but they're no threat to you. They're polite and kind and so forth. So this is what you do, these mental exercises first. You rehearse in your mind many, many times, and you rehearse being calm in the midst of this. Because that's what people do when they have phobias like this. When they bring this to mind, they bring it with panic and fear to mind. And they rehearse in the wrong way, and they rehearse many, 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 many times in the wrong way. So what we have to do is say, well, I'm rehearsing my phobia, my fear. I have to rehearse not being phobic, not being fearful of these situations. I need to imagine myself being very calm and holding that calm emotion. And I rehearse it many times. Before I try it in real life, I rehearse it many times in my mind. But I want to rehearse the right feeling in the midst of people. That's what I want to rehearse. So, and as soon as you start to feel panicky or anything in terms of your mindset, when your imaginary stage that you're rehearsing, you withdraw, let it go, come back to the safety of your place and get into a nice calm mood again, and then start again. So rehearse 100 times or 1,000 times, but rehearse in a nice controlled situation, and then you will see that you feel confident, you know what to do, you've rehearsed many, many times how to think and feel about people. And that's how to do it. And then you can take it out into the street and see how well it helps you.
Our next question is from Trevor in Bluefield, West Virginia, United States. Is the notion that, quote, everything is mind a Mahayana view? Is belief in an underlying objective reality a useful distinction for practice, or is this one of those questions that the Buddha might have thought better left unanswered?
Well, that is a whole school of Buddhism called consciousness only. And that is very similar to some of the Greek philosophers. This is called idealism or ideaism, that the universe is, your experience of the universe is really a purely mental phenomenon, and that there is really no material objective universe. And this, so it's not new to Buddhism. In fact, it was discussed centuries before. Plato and so forth are called idealists or ideaists. And this also becomes part of modern philosophy. Bishop Berkeley is the most famous of the modern philosophers. He's actually he's a religious person. He's a bishop, actually. And he proposes that the universe is just a collection of souls kind of interacting, that there is no actual material phenomenon. That's an illusion. So this idea is quite common in philosophy. I don't see the Buddha holding that particularly. When it comes down to, he's not actually a philosopher. The Buddha starts with a statement. He says the statement, the highest value, the most important thing is that there is suffering and that there is a solution to this suffering. And you don't have to know whether the universe is just a mind-made phenomenon or a material mind-body phenomena, etc. You don't have to know this. You just have to know, you set your aim on that there is suffering and it can be alleviated. So he's a very pragmatic philosopher. He's not actually interested in ideas that do not lead to the end of suffering. So some other ideas that he very clearly sets aside, he says, don't waste your time trying to figure out whether the universe is infinite in space or finite in space. Don't waste your time trying to figure out whether the universe is beginningless or has a beginning. These are things that you should set aside as not conducive to the solution to this question of how to free yourself from suffering. And so various unresolvable arguments. So the idea of that you may be, how do you know you're not dreaming all of this and that nothing really exists except your mind? You will talk about that forever and never find out. But you're wasting your time. You could be using it to come to the end of suffering. So the Buddha is a very practical man. He says, I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to give you overwhelming arguments for why you should drop this. I'm telling you, you can waste your life thinking about things like that, but I'm offering you a way out of suffering. Now you take it or leave it, but I'm not going to waste my time arguing these things, because actually logic cannot make a compelling case, a case that absolutely compels you to decide or believe one way or the other. So that's the Buddha is actually saying that logical arguments have their limitations, and quite often they should be set aside because they will waste your time, and that you must feel in a common sense way the universal experience of suffering which humans have. And they know there is a quality of pain in life, and it comes, sometimes you're not in pain, but there's an inevitability that must occur. Can you do something about this? So that's what the Buddha is really skirting around, many of those philosophical issues that have never been resolved and are not resolved to this day, but do not contribute to the relief of suffering. So that's how he would have answered that question.
Our next question is from Ariel in the United States from the live feed. What is a good goal to aspire to? I love to sing, hopefully make a career out of it. Many say I should go further for money and fame, but I don't sing to gain material or status. So what is the core goal I should aspire to in the aspect of the Dhamma and in lay life?
Well, I think that you need to put livelihood and the arts in their place, and they have a function in the world, but people often overvalue them. Artists are quite often become heroes to people, and people imagine everybody wants to be a rock star, opera singer, something like that, because it's a beautiful thing, etc. But that is not the highest value in life. It's okay to do those things, and if you have talent and develop it, so forth, it's fine. But please keep it in its place, because it can be a great cause of suffering. The devotion to the art and the ego that comes with it, and the identification. So artists tend to identify as artists, like musicians. When you ask them who they are, they don't tell you they're a waiter. Although that's what they're like. They are waiting tables, but they say they're a musician. And they're supporting themselves by being a waiter, but they identify as a musician. But a waiter that's not a musician says, I'm a waiter. But a musician who's a waiter says they're a musician. So this is where suffering arises. When you identify yourself as a musician, a singer, a talented person, a creator, something like this, then you're going to suffer. So you should put that down as a mere possibility of livelihood, and hold your spiritual values as the highest. So you don't want to be burdened with excessive concern for success or failure, for praise or blame, for good fortune, bad fortune. This kind of thing is transcended. This polarity is transcended by spiritual values. So there's nothing wrong with singing. There's nothing wrong with making money from singing. There's nothing wrong with having a livelihood based on music. There's nothing wrong with being praised, etc. But it is not the meaning of life at all, and you must keep it in its place. It's merely a talent, a craft, a skill, an art, and it needs to be put in its place. It's fine, but it's not the exalted value of life. It's not to be dismissed. It's livelihood, and it's something that you may have capacity for. That's the way to do it, because I've seen, having been in the arts myself and in music, I see a lot of unnecessary suffering, because people are overwhelmed by this aspiration for fame and fortune and all this kind of stuff, and it's just totally unnecessary. It's just get over it. Just do it, but don't make more of it than it is. Yeah.
Our next question's from the live feed from JML. Any advice for people with ADHD?
Yeah, I think that a complete devotion to a spiritual practice and the constant practice of meditation is the best cure for ADHD, and including, like, sometimes the roots of ADHD are actually trauma, early childhood trauma, etc. So that's one of the reasons why the mind won't focus, is that it's been it's been damaged in some way. You feel emotional damage. And so metta, the practice of loving kindness, is one way of undoing that damage. To feel safe and to feel comfortable in the present is something that one cultivates. And then with that, you're able to sustain attention in the present, because the present is now comfortable. When with trauma, it's not comfortable, so the mind is looking for a way out. It can't sustain attention in the present because it's not a comfortable place to be. So this is a whole life practice, and to some degree, everybody, even normal, quite high functioning people, will discover how short their attention span really is if they're asked to try to meditate, say, on the breath. So people who can are a concert violinist or a neurosurgeon or a physicist or something, might think that they have great attention, and they do when they're doing their particular practice. But if I ask them to just watch their breath as it comes in and out of their nose, they will suddenly find themselves unable to do it. They are mindful. The capacity of their attention is not able to do this. So everybody has some degree of ADHD. They just don't know it. And the cure for it is practice, sustained practice on low sensory experiences, such as just experience of breathing, because it's not intrinsically interesting, it's neutral. And can you sustain your attention on a neutral experience? By the way, most of life is a neutral experience. It's not exciting, not intense, not interesting. And are you going to wait only for the moments that are interesting, that can catch your attention? Or would you prefer to have your whole ordinary life be interesting? So it is attention itself which makes life interesting. And interest is something that you generate. It's not in the world. It's you become interested in the ordinary experience of simply being alive. And that's the cure for most of the human population is a form of ADHD. They are actually very restless, very disturbed when they don't have proper stimulation, and they can't get enough of it. And the more stimulation you get, the weaker your attention becomes. So this is something that everybody has to deal with if they hope to be truly, sustainably happy.
Our next question is from Anonymous in Oregon, United States. When dealing with chronic pain during meditation, or in my case now, neuropathy, a side effect of chemotherapy, how does one focus during meditation without becoming, quote, absorbed in pain?
Yes, there are two things. One is truly, which is a kind of a type of meditation where you focus on pain itself, and then if you can, and it catches your attention. If you get deeply enough into it, it kind of breaks up and vanishes. But it's a hard way to do it. Primarily, your attention should be directed away from the pain, and if you're truly absorbed in something, the whole body's feeling mechanism tends to become neutral. So when this happens all the time. If you're really absorbed in a good book, you might not notice that, and you might even be standing in a bookstore. You go into a bookstore and you pick up this book and you start reading it. It's fascinating, and then you realize you've been standing there for half an hour with your hand holding a book, and then you realize, oh my goodness, my elbow is so my arm is sore. I was very tired. I wasn't aware of that. So notice that your attention has been captivated on something outside of your body, and that your body has been removed, because this is what they explain in the Buddhist texts. careful observation of the mind, that the consciousness is like you're actually not aware both of sight and sound at the same time. So you're looking at my face and hearing my voice, and that's, of course, you're listening to it as a podcast, but you're watching me and hearing me, and you think that's happening at the same time, but apparently your consciousness is flickering back and forth between sight and sound, sight and sound. So this is what happens. You will see this. If in the midst of if your friend is talking to you in a restaurant and somebody walks in with a gun and points it, you will not have heard what your friend was saying. The conversation, your friend doesn't see the person and continues to talk. You were listening to them. Now you're focused on the person with the gun and the potential danger. Your sight consciousness overwhelms your hearing consciousness, and you can't remember your friend talking to you at all. So you can understand that you can focus your consciousness on an external object away from the feeling consciousness, and you won't have that pain. So that's outside the body. Not now. There are whole schools of Buddhism that focus on feelings, the experience of pain, and so forth. This is not. This is not intrinsically the advice that the Buddha gives. A whole school of practice has developed about sweeping through the body, feeling sensations, and focusing on sensations, and not running away from pain and all this kind of stuff. This is a I would say a complete exaggeration of a very small portion of the Buddha's teaching, and it's not the general teaching. He himself says, the Buddha himself says, he had a sore back in his old age. He was quite often not able to be out of pain unless he was in concentration, in samadhi. So he's actually detached from his physical pain. But the only time, he says to his attendant, Ananda, the only time I get relief from my back pain is when I'm in samadhi. So samadhi is deep concentration, say on the breath. And when he does that, the pain in his back is gone. So there's an example of the Buddha himself. He's not exploring his pain. He is, when he's having to operate in normal consciousness, pain intrudes into his field. And he deals with it. He has to deal with it. But he can get away from it through samadhi. So this is the type of, if you want relief from the pain, and I agree that you should have relief from the pain, find external focuses or something like the breath or loving kindness to help you reduce that pain. Yeah.
Ajahn, our next question is from the live stream. It's combined of two questions that are quite similar, from Starscream and from Jordan. How do I deepen my concentration? I have trouble staying still. I have virtually no concentration.
Right. Well, you can't possibly hope for. It's like asking, how do I play on stage at Carnegie Hall? I'd like to play the cello at Carnegie Hall. And it seems like when I try, it just doesn't come out very nice at all. Right? So there's an old joke in monks musicians. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? By practicing. It's not by a map to Carnegie Hall. There's nothing magic about Carnegie Hall. You can get up there on stage and just make a mess of it. So how do I concentrate? Is like asking, how do I get to Carnegie Hall? Well, you practice. And it's the preliminaries to concentration. So there are a whole series of preliminaries that you do which result in concentration. So concentration is actually a result, not something that you just manifest, but something that it's the result of this, of skillful living, of skillful thinking, skillful speaking, and skillful behavior. And when you have that, how will you know that your life is skillful? Because you will be able to concentrate. So this is how you know. So this is, don't be frustrated by the fact that you can't concentrate. Go back and ask, how do you get to concentration? And there's many instructions on this. And if you want to listen to some of this, it's called the Eightfold Path. And I have many talks on my YouTube channel on the Eightfold Path and the whole process towards this eighth factor. The last factor of the Eightfold Path is samadhi, or concentration. And it's absolutely a beautiful experience. But there are 7 factors before that. So you can't skip over the 7 and just have the 8th. You need to go through all the 7 and for it to blossom in the 8th. Yeah.
Our next question is from the live feed from Kent. Dear Ajahn, I understand that when the Buddha spoke about kamma, i.e. action, he meant not just action, but volitional action. When it comes to mental kamma, do all our thoughts bear kamma, or is it only more volitional kinds of thinking, as in extended trains of discursive thought?
Well, the thought and the emotion connected to the thought is the volition requires emotion. So mere drifting thoughts sometimes just are neutral. They have no substance, they have no emotional substance to them, so they are quite neutral in their results. But thoughts that are rooted in anger have a negative result. But if that thought remains just an internal thought and doesn't issue in speech or action, it has a different result than if you spoke in anger or acted in anger. So if you just have angry thoughts, it does have a fruition. It does have a negative result, but it is different than if you spoke those thoughts out loud or acted out those thoughts. Each one will have a consequence in line with thought, speech, and action, and depending on the emotion. So if the emotional root of your thoughts is greed, desire, and if it's rooted in agitation or sloth, heaviness, depression, each one of those will have different results. And different results whether you just think about it, speak about it, or act on it.
Our next question is from Norma in Oakland Park, Florida. How to deal with a loved one who's difficult throughout life and even more difficult and toxic as she declines with addictions, dementia, along with limited personal mobility, but a lot of irritability.
Well, you might look for some relief from the situation yourself, and also people tend to ask me, how do you fix a person like that? And I say, what makes you think you can fix a person like that? There's a lot of people in this life that are not going to be fixed. So the question, how do you fix it, is a question from a movie where everybody who's all messed up always gets fixed in the end. Novels are like this and stories are like this, but in reality, lots of people die without getting fixed. How should you feel about that? Well, you didn't create the situation. You're not in charge of the situation, and you can't. I mean, of course, if you could just say, don't be like that, and everybody would listen, then it would be fine, but they don't listen. So you're off the hook. You're not responsible for the tragic consequences that they are generating from their own lack of skill. So you should be healthy and well in the midst of this. And the second thing is, you should ask yourself, look, is this by associating with this person, am I generating a lot of unskillful, unwholesome emotions myself, which I'm going to have to deal with those results? And if that is the case, then you need to get some space and distance from that person. And, hopefully you can recommend somebody else to help them, etc. But you can't keep putting yourself in a situation that causes you to generate a lot of unwholesome feelings. You need to be compassionate towards yourself as well, and to get some space and distance from those who are unwilling to help themselves. It's very different when you have a person who just doesn't know any better, but is willing to try, and then a person who is not willing to try. So that person who's not willing to try is a fool, and the person who's willing to try is something worth investing in. So you need there's some compassion for yourself and some wisdom for yourself to deal with the situation without guilt or naive expectations. And secondly, to bring in the solution if you can find other people to take on the burden as well, and not to feel that you need to always put yourself in a situation where there is no return on your investment. So that's the kind of way you should frame this whole situation. So I think we are at the end of our time, and we will leave it for today. And that's it.